Red Bull responds to Perez after being exposed. McLaren boss makes a big statement for 2026. And Aston receives bad news for new car. Lest EGT into the latest F1 news. What happens when one of Formula One's most explosive partnerships finally comes to an end? When Sergio Perez walked away from Red Bull at the close of 2024, he didn't just leave quietly. Instead, he dropped bombshell after bombshell about life alongside Max Verstappen that has the entire F1 world talking. And trust me, what he revealed will change how you see Red Bull forever. Picture this. You're one of the most talented drivers on the planet. You've just landed a seat at the most dominant team in Formula One, and you're ready to fight for championships. But then your team boss sits you down and tells you something that would crush most people's dreams. That's exactly what happened to Sergio Perez when he joined Red Bull in 2021. The Mexican driver has finally opened up about his 4 tumultuous years as Max Verstappen's teammate, and his revelations are absolutely shocking. From day one conversations that set the tone for everything that followed, to impossible situations where he literally could not win no matter what he did, Perez has painted a picture of Red Bull that's far more complex and controversial than anyone imagined. But here's what makes this story so fascinating. Perez isn't just complaining or making excuses. He's providing an inside look at what might be the most psychologically demanding position in all of motorsport. Being Max Verstappen's teammate at Red Bull, according to Perez, is the hardest job in Formula One. Period. And after hearing what he went through, you might just agree. Let's start with that first conversation, because it set everything in motion. When Perez walked through the doors at Red Bull's headquarters for the first time, he thought he knew what he was getting into. He was wrong. Christian Horner, who was the team principal at the time, didn't sugarcoat anything. The message was crystal clear. This project was built for Max Verstappen, and Max Verstappen alone. Imagine being told that while you'll be driving one of 2 cars, the entire operation revolves around your teammate. That's not just pressure, that's a complete redefinition of what it means to be a racing driver. Most drivers join teams believing they have a fair shot at glory. Perez joined knowing he was playing a supporting role in someone else's story. But here's where it gets interesting. Perez didn't walk away. Instead, he embraced the challenge with a level of professionalism that's honestly remarkable. He told Horner that it didn't matter, that he was there to develop the car, support the team, and do whatever was needed. That kind of response shows you exactly why Red Bull wanted him in the first place. However, being professional about an impossible situation and actually living through it are 2 completely different things. And as Perez would soon discover, even accepting his role as the second driver wouldn't protect him from the psychological warfare that was about to unfold. The real drama began in 2022, and this is where Perez's story becomes absolutely mind-blowing. Early in the season, Red Bull made what they later called a mistake. The car came out heavier than planned, with weight distribution that was too far forward. For most drivers, this would have been a disaster. For Perez, it was a gift from the racing gods. That heavier, more stable car played perfectly into Perez's driving style. Suddenly, the supporting actor found himself faster than the star. In the simulator, Perez was consistently quicker than Verstappen. When he arrived at racetracks, he wasn't thinking about how to survive or how to extract every 1/10 of a second from a difficult car. He was thinking about winning races. For a brief moment in 2022, Sergio Perez believed he could fight Max Verstappen for the World Championship, and you know what? He probably could have. But then something happened that changed everything. The upgrades arrived. This is where Perez's story takes a dark turn, and where his allegations about Red Bull become truly explosive. According to the Mexican driver, once those upgrades hit the cars, there was a very clear direction that the team absolutely had to follow. And that direction wasn't favorable to his driving style. The stable, predictable car that had allowed Perez to showcase his speed disappeared overnight. In its place was a machine that required him to completely relearn how to drive. The automatic feeling he'd enjoyed was gone. Instead of thinking about racing, he was thinking about not crashing. Instead of fighting for wins, he was fighting to stay on track. Perez describes 2023 as a carbon copy of what happened in 2022. He and Verstappen started the season evenly matched, running similar times and competing on equal terms. But then Barcelona happened, and everything fell apart. By the time they reached the Spanish Grand Prix, Perez was already a full second per lap slower than his teammate. A second per lap in Formula One might as well be an eternity. That's the difference between fighting for pole position and struggling to make it into the top 10. For a driver of Perez's caliber, being that far off the pace wasn't just frustrating, it was humiliating. But here's where Red Bull's response becomes truly problematic, at least according to Perez. Instead of acknowledging that the car's development direction might not suit both drivers equally, the team began pointing fingers at everything else. Was Perez not concentrated enough? Was he doing too many commercial activities? Was he distracted by outside interests? The pressure mounted, and Perez found himself in an impossible situation. When he was faster than Verstappen, it created problems within the team. When he was slower than Verstappen, it also created problems. According to his account, there was literally no scenario where he could perform his job without facing criticism or tension. Think about that for a moment. You're a professional athlete at the highest level of your sport, and no matter what you do, it's wrong. Win, and you're upsetting the team's hierarchy. Lose, and you're not doing your job. It's a psychological nightmare that would break most people. But Perez learned something valuable from this experience, something that speaks to his character as both a driver and a person. Instead of complaining or making excuses, he focused on making the absolute best of an impossible situation. He learned to extract maximum benefit from whatever opportunities came his way, even when those opportunities were limited by factors beyond his control. This mindset shift is fascinating because it reveals something about the nature of success in Formula One. Sometimes the biggest victories aren't measured in race wins or championship points. Sometimes survival itself is an achievement worth celebrating. Perez's 4-year tenure at Red Bull ended after the 2024 season, but his story is far from over. He's set to return to the grid in 2026 with Cadillac, partnering with Valtteri Bottas in what promises to be one of the most intriguing driver lineups on the grid. The question is, what has he learned from his time in the pressure cooker that is Red Bull racing? The bigger question, though, is what Perez's revelations tell us about Red Bull as an organization. Is this simply the reality of having a generational talent like Verstappen on your team? Is it impossible to maintain competitive balance when one driver is operating on a different level entirely? Or does this point to deeper organizational issues that go beyond driver dynamics? Red Bull's dominance over the past few years has been built on the foundation of Max Verstappen's extraordinary talent. But it's also been built on the contributions of drivers like Perez, who've sacrificed their own ambitions for the team's success. The question moving forward is whether this model is sustainable, especially as other teams continue to close the gap. What makes Perez's story so compelling isn't just the drama or the behind-the-scenes politics. It's the human element. Here's a driver who could have easily become bitter or resentful about his situation, but instead chose to approach it with grace and professionalism. He learned from every setback, adapted to every challenge, and emerged from 4 years at Red Bull as a better driver and a stronger person. As we look ahead to 2026 and Perez's return with Cadillac, we can expect to see a driver who's been forged in the fires of Formula One's most demanding environment. He's learned how to perform under impossible pressure, how to extract performance from imperfect machinery, and how to maintain his sanity in a sport that can drive even the strongest personalities to their breaking point. The Formula One paddock is full of stories about drivers who couldn't handle the pressure of being Max Verstappen's teammate. Pierre Gasly and Alex Albon both struggled in that role before Perez arrived. What makes Perez different is not just that he survived 4 years in that position, but that he emerged with his reputation intact and his skills sharpened. So the next time you watch a Formula One race and see drivers battling wheel to wheel for position, remember Sergio Perez's story. Remember that sometimes the biggest battles in this sport aren't fought on track, but in the spaces between what's possible and what's expected. And remember that true champions aren't always the ones standing on the top step of the podium, but the ones who find ways to succeed even when success seems impossible. What if I told you that becoming a Formula One world champion doesn't require you to transform into someone you're not? That you don't need to adopt a ruthless persona or play mind games to reach the pinnacle of motorsport? Well, Lando Norris just proved exactly that. And his former teammate Carlos Sainz has some fascinating insights about what makes this championship win so special. In a sport where champions are often portrayed as cold, calculating machines, Norris has shattered the mold. He's become what many are calling the good guy world champion, staying true to his authentic self throughout his journey to the top. But here's where it gets really interesting. Sainz, who was Norris's first Formula One teammate, has revealed some incredible details about what he witnessed during those early McLaren days that nobody else saw. The story begins back when Norris was still finding his feet in Formula One. Sainz had a front row seat to watch this young British driver develop from an exciting rookie into what would eventually become F1's top competitor. What Sainz observed wasn't just raw speed, though he emphasizes that Norris possesses far more pace than most people recognize. Instead, he witnessed something much more rare in the cutthroat world of professional motorsport. During those formative years at McLaren, Sainz saw a driver who possessed the fundamental speed to become a multiple world champion if success was purely based on lap times. However, what truly impressed the Spanish driver was watching Norris systematically develop every other aspect of his racing craft, while never compromising his core personality. This is where the story becomes truly remarkable. Most drivers who reach the championship level undergo significant personality changes along the way. The pressure, the politics, the media scrutiny. These factors typically force competitors to build protective walls around themselves. They learn to be guarded in interviews, strategic in their relationships, and often develop the kind of ruthless edge that fans have come to expect from world champions. Norris took a completely different path. Throughout his championship campaign, Norris maintained an approach that many would consider risky in today's Formula One environment. He remained honest about his struggles, open about his vulnerabilities, and refused to engage in the kind of psychological warfare that has become commonplace in the sport. When faced with wheel-to-wheel battles, he consistently chose clean racing over questionable tactics. This wasn't weakness. It was a deliberate choice to compete on his own terms. The championship battle itself was a masterclass in maintaining authenticity under extreme pressure. With Max Verstappen mounting one of the most impressive comeback attempts in recent memory, pursuing his 5th consecutive title, the spotlight on Norris intensified dramatically. Social media criticism reached fever pitch during the early part of the season when results weren't coming. The motorsport press dissected every decision, every radio call, every moment of apparent hesitation. Lesser drivers might have cracked under this scrutiny or fundamentally altered their approach. Instead, Norris absorbed the pressure while staying committed to his racing philosophy. He worked within McLaren's framework that prioritized fairness between him and Oscar Piastri, never demanding preferential treatment despite being in championship contention. This level playing field approach could have cost him the title, yet he trusted in his abilities and his team's methods. The climactic moments of the championship fight demonstrated exactly why Sainz believes Norris deserves recognition beyond just his driving skills. When Verstappen closed the gap to just 2 points in the final standings, the tension was unbearable. Many expected Norris to adopt more aggressive tactics or demand team orders. Instead, he doubled down on his principles, ultimately securing the championship through superior performance rather than political maneuvering. Sainz's perspective on this achievement carries special weight because of their unique relationship. Having been Norris's first Formula One teammate, the Spaniard witnessed the raw foundation that would eventually support a championship campaign. He described seeing a driver with natural speed that exceeded public perception, combined with an unusual willingness to acknowledge areas for improvement rather than projecting false confidence. What makes Sainz's commentary particularly insightful is his recognition of the broader implications of Norris's success. In an era where sports personalities often feel pressured to manufacture controversial personas for publicity, Norris proved that authenticity can be a competitive advantage. His openness about mental health struggles, his genuine friendships with competitors, and his refusal to engage in manufactured drama actually strengthened his position rather than weakening it. The development process that Sainz observed wasn't just about improving lap times or racecraft. He watched Norris evolve his entire approach to professional motorsport while maintaining the core characteristics that defined him as a person. This balancing act requires exceptional mental strength and self-awareness, qualities that may be more important for championship success than traditional racing attributes. However, Sainz's comments reveal an interesting concern about what comes next. Championship success has historically changed drivers, often in ways that distance them from the qualities that initially made them special. The Spanish driver explicitly hopes that this world championship doesn't get in Norris's head and alter the fundamental characteristics that made this victory so meaningful. This worry isn't unfounded. The trappings of championship success, increased media obligations, commercial opportunities, elevated status within the paddock, can gradually shift a driver's priorities and perspective. Sainz's hope is that Norris will either maintain his current approach or, ideally, become even more relaxed and able to enjoy the sport now that he's achieved his ultimate goal. The friendship between these two drivers adds another layer to this story. Sainz playfully mentions his intention to keep Norris grounded during their golf rounds, suggesting a relationship that extends far beyond professional courtesy. This kind of genuine connection between competitors is increasingly rare in modern Formula One, making it all the more valuable. Looking at the broader context of Norris's championship, it represents something significant for the sport itself. His success demonstrates that there are multiple pathways to the top of Formula One, and that maintaining personal integrity isn't incompatible with ultimate success. For young drivers watching from lower categories, Norris's example provides an alternative template for building a championship-caliber career. The pressure that Norris faced throughout his title campaign was immense, particularly given the social media environment that modern athletes must navigate. Sainz acknowledges that his former teammate must have suffered through the constant criticism and analysis that accompanied every race weekend. The fact that he maintained his composure and principles throughout this ordeal speaks to exceptional character development. What emerges from Sainz's observations is a portrait of a champion who succeeded not despite his niceness, but because of the strength that underlies his approach to competition. Being genuine, honest, and principled requires courage in a sport where image management often takes precedence over authenticity. Norris's willingness to be vulnerable about his struggles actually demonstrated the kind of mental toughness that championships require. The 2-point margin by which Norris ultimately secured his title adds another dimension to this achievement. Such a narrow victory could easily be attributed to luck or circumstance, but the consistency required to maintain championship contention across an entire season while under intense scrutiny suggests something much more substantial. As Formula One moves forward, Norris's championship will likely be remembered not just for the racing excellence it required, but for the example it set about competing with integrity in professional sports. Sainz's insights provide a unique window into the development of this approach and the personal qualities that made it possible. The hope now is that this success story can inspire both current competitors and future generations to pursue excellence without sacrificing authenticity. What if I told you that Formula One's newest world champion just admitted to saying things he wishes he could take back about two of the sport's greatest drivers? This is the story of how Lando Norris won his first championship while staying true to himself, even when that meant making mistakes along the way. The 2025 Formula One season will be remembered not just for McLaren's return to glory, but for how their young British driver managed to capture the world championship without compromising who he is. But behind the celebration lies a story of regret, growth, and what it really means to win on your own terms. Lando Norris has always been different from the typical Formula One champion, where other title winners are known for their ruthless aggression and win-at-all-costs mentality. Norris carved his own path. He chose collaboration over confrontation, respect over ruthlessness. Yet this approach didn't come without its challenges, and along the way, he made some comments that he now openly regrets. In a candid reflection on his championship victory, Norris revealed that he wishes he could take back certain things he said about both Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton during his journey to the top. These weren't calculated attacks or strategic mind games, but rather moments where his genuine personality got the better of him, leading to comments made in the heat of competition that he now sees as mistakes. The relationship between Norris and Verstappen became particularly strained during the 2025 season as their championship battle intensified. When Verstappen suggested that he would have wrapped up the title much earlier if he had been driving the McLaren, Norris fired back with uncharacteristic directness. He accused the Dutch driver of not having a clue about certain aspects of racing and criticized Red Bull Racing for talking nonsense. These comments, while born from competitive frustration, are among those that Norris now wishes he could retract. The tension reached its peak when Norris questioned Verstappen's driving tactics on multiple occasions throughout the season. What started as legitimate concerns about racing standards evolved into more personal criticisms that went beyond the track. Looking back, Norris recognizes that his emotions sometimes got the better of his judgment, leading him to say things that didn't reflect the respect he actually holds for his rival's abilities. Perhaps even more telling was an incident involving Lewis Hamilton that occurred during the 2024 season in Hungary. In the cool-down room after the race, when Hamilton was praising McLaren's impressive pace, Norris responded with a comment about Hamilton having a fast car 7 years ago. This dismissive remark caught many off guard, as it seemed uncharacteristic of someone who generally shows great respect for the sport's legends. The comment appeared to minimize Hamilton's achievements and suggested that his success was purely down to having superior machinery. For someone who typically speaks thoughtfully about his fellow drivers, this moment stood out as particularly jarring. Hamilton, a 7-time world champion and one of the greatest drivers in Formula One history, had been offering genuine praise for McLaren's progress, only to receive what seemed like a dismissive response. These incidents highlight the pressure that young drivers face when competing at the highest level of motorsport. The intensity of championship battles can bring out emotions and reactions that drivers later regret. For Norris, who prides himself on being authentic and genuine, these moments represent times when his emotions overrode his better judgment. What makes Norris's championship victory particularly meaningful is that he achieved it while learning from these mistakes rather than being defined by them. Throughout the 2025 season, he maintained his commitment to racing fairly and treating his competitors with respect, even when the pressure was at its most intense. The collaboration with his teammate Oscar Piastri exemplified this approach, as both drivers worked together for the team's benefit rather than engaging in destructive internal competition. The McLaren approach to the championship battle was often criticized as being too soft or lacking the killer instinct traditionally associated with title-winning campaigns. Some argued that Norris should have been more aggressive, more willing to play political games, more ruthless in his pursuit of victory. Instead, he chose to stay true to his values, even when it might have made his path to the championship more difficult. This decision to win on his own terms makes Norris's regret about his previous comments even more significant. He recognizes that those moments of poor judgment were inconsistent with the person he wants to be and the way he wants to compete. The fact that he can openly acknowledge these mistakes while celebrating his championship shows remarkable maturity and self-awareness. The relationship between respect and competition in Formula One has always been complex. Drivers need to maintain their competitive edge while also acknowledging the achievements and abilities of their rivals. Finding this balance becomes even more challenging when championships are on the line, and every point matters. Norris's experience shows how easy it is to cross that line, even for someone with the best intentions. His comments about giving more respect to his fellow drivers than most others do reveal his genuine admiration for his competitors. When he speaks about Hamilton being comparable to Michael Schumacher as one of the greatest drivers in Formula One history, it's clear that his previous dismissive comment was an aberration rather than a reflection of his true feelings. Similarly, his acknowledgement of Verstappen's abilities, despite their on-track battles, shows that competition doesn't have to mean disrespect. The pressure of competing for a world championship can reveal both the best and worst in drivers. For Norris, it exposed moments of poor judgment that he now regrets, but it also highlighted his ability to maintain his principles under extreme pressure. His willingness to admit his mistakes while celebrating his achievements demonstrates the kind of character that the sport needs from its champions. As Norris looks back on his championship-winning season, he can take pride in the fact that he achieved his ultimate goal without compromising his core values. Yes, he made mistakes along the way and said things he wishes he could take back. But he also proved that it's possible to win at the highest level while remaining true to yourself and treating your competitors with respect. The Formula One paddock is notorious for its political maneuvering and psychological warfare. Drivers often use media comments as weapons to unsettle their rivals or gain competitive advantages. What's refreshing about Norris's approach is his honesty about when his comments cross the line from competitive banter into something more personal and regrettable. His championship victory sends an important message to future generations of drivers that success doesn't require abandoning your principles or becoming someone you're not. It's possible to compete fiercely while maintaining respect for your rivals and acknowledging when you've made mistakes. This combination of competitive drive and personal integrity is what makes champions truly great. The fact that Norris can openly discuss his regrets while celebrating his championship shows remarkable emotional intelligence. He understands that growth comes from acknowledging mistakes rather than defending them. This maturity will serve him well as he defends his title and continues to compete at the highest level of motorsport. In a sport often defined by controversy and conflict, Lando Norris has shown that it's possible to be a champion while remaining true to your values. His regrets about past comments don't diminish his achievements. They enhance them by showing that he's learned from his mistakes and grown as both a competitor and a person. That's the mark of a true champion. What if I told you that one of Formula One's most hyped teams for the 2026 season might actually be heading for disaster? While everyone's talking about Aston Martin as the next big thing, a former insider is dropping some serious reality checks that could shatter those championship dreams. Let's dive into why this green machine might be setting itself up for one of the most spectacular failures in recent Formula One history, and what this means for the sport's biggest regulation shakeup in decades. If you've been following Formula One lately, you've probably heard all the excitement surrounding Aston Martin's master plan for domination. They've got Adrian Newey, the legendary designer who's basically the Michelangelo of aerodynamics. They're getting Honda engines, the same power units that helped Red Bull dominate for years. They've built a state-of-the-art factory that looks like something out of a sci-fi movie. On paper, it sounds like the perfect recipe for success, but here's where things get interesting. Bernie Collins, who worked as a strategist for Aston Martin during their 2021 and 2022 campaigns, is throwing some serious cold water on all this optimism. And when someone who knows the inner workings of a team starts raising red flags, you better pay attention. Collins isn't just being pessimistic for the sake of it. She's pointing out something that might seem obvious, but is often overlooked in all the excitement. Making one major change to a Formula One team is challenging enough. Changing your engine supplier? That's a massive undertaking that requires months of integration work. Switching to a new gearbox? That affects everything from the car's balance to its reliability. Bringing in a new chief designer? That means completely restructuring your design philosophy. But Aston Martin isn't just making one of these changes. They're making all of them simultaneously. Plus, moving to a new factory and implementing a new wind tunnel. It's like trying to perform 5 different surgeries on a patient at the same time and expecting everything to work perfectly. Think about it this way. When Mercedes struggled with their car concept in recent seasons, it took them years to fully understand and correct their problems, and they only changed their design philosophy. When McLaren switched to Mercedes engines back in 2021, they needed time to optimize the integration. Even Red Bull, with all their success, had growing pains when they transitioned from Renault to Honda power units. Now imagine trying to coordinate all these changes while also dealing with completely new technical regulations. The 2026 Formula One season isn't just another year with minor tweaks. It's a complete reset of the sport's technical landscape. The cars will look different, drive different, and require entirely new approaches to setup and development. This is where Collins's warning becomes particularly ominous. She's not questioning Adrian Newey's talent or Honda's capabilities. Everyone knows Newey is brilliant at what he does. His track record speaks for itself. But even the most talented designer needs time to understand a new organization, learn how different departments work together, and implement his vision effectively. The history of Formula One is littered with examples of talented people joining teams with high expectations, only to struggle in their first year because the integration process was more complex than anticipated. Remember when Fernando Alonso joined Ferrari with massive expectations? Or when Lewis Hamilton moved to Mercedes before their dominant era began? Success rarely happens overnight, even with the best ingredients. What makes this situation even more precarious is the timing. The 2026 regulation changes are so significant that every team is essentially starting from scratch. In normal circumstances, a team making major internal changes might have a stable regulatory environment to fall back on. They could use their existing knowledge as a foundation while implementing new processes. But with the 2026 rules, everyone's learning simultaneously, which amplifies the risk of any organizational disruption. Collins also touches on another elephant in the room that many fans prefer to ignore. Lance Stroll's position within the team adds another layer of complexity to their situation. While she defends his driving abilities and suggests he's better than many give him credit for, the reality is that having the team owner's son as one of your drivers creates unique dynamics that other teams don't have to navigate. This isn't necessarily a criticism of Lance Stroll as a driver. He's proven he can deliver when the car is competitive, with multiple podium finishes and even a pole position to his name. But the perception of nepotism, whether fair or unfair, can affect team morale and public expectations. When you're already dealing with massive technical and organizational changes, any additional source of internal tension becomes magnified. The broader context makes Aston Martin's situation even more intriguing. After that promising start to 2023, when Fernando Alonso was regularly on the podium, the team's performance fell off dramatically. They finished 7th in the Constructors' Championship, which for a team with championship aspirations represents a significant disappointment. This recent history of inconsistency adds another layer of concern to Collins' warnings. It suggests that even when things seem to be going well for Aston Martin, they struggle to maintain that momentum. Now they're betting everything on a complete organizational overhaul during the sport's biggest technical shakeup in years. But here's what makes this story particularly fascinating from a Formula One perspective. The sport has always been about taking calculated risks, and sometimes the biggest gambles pay off spectacularly. When Mercedes made their engine formula bet ahead of the 2014 hybrid era, many thought it was overly ambitious. When Red Bull decided to develop their own power unit division, skeptics questioned the logic. Both decisions ultimately proved successful. The question is whether Aston Martin's approach represents calculated ambition or dangerous overreach. The difference often comes down to execution and timing, two factors that are notoriously difficult to predict in Formula One. Looking at successful team transformations in Formula One history, most happened gradually over several seasons. Mercedes didn't become dominant overnight. Red Bull's rise to the top took years of steady development. Even Ferrari's most successful periods were built on foundations laid over multiple seasons. What Aston Martin is attempting is essentially the Formula One equivalent of renovating your entire house while living in it during a hurricane. The scope of change they're managing while dealing with new regulations creates a perfect storm of complexity that could easily overwhelm even the most capable organization. The 2026 season is shaping up to be one of the most unpredictable in recent Formula One history, and Aston Martin's situation perfectly encapsulates why. They could emerge as championship contenders if everything clicks together perfectly. Or they could find themselves struggling to score points while dealing with integration issues and reliability problems. Collins's warning serves as a crucial reality check in a sport where optimism and hype often overshadow practical considerations. While fans and media focus on the exciting potential of Newey's genius combined with Honda's power, the former strategist is highlighting the unglamorous but critical challenges of making such massive changes work in practice. Whether Aston Martin proves her wrong or validates her concerns will be one of the most compelling storylines to follow as Formula One enters its new era. Formula One has always been a sport where the real drama happens just as much off the track as on it. But what McLaren CEO Zak Brown recently revealed might shock even the most dedicated F1 fans. In a candid interview, Brown openly admitted to using psychological warfare tactics to deliberately destabilize rival teams, including their main competitors, Red Bull. This isn't just friendly competition we're talking about here. This is calculated corporate warfare designed to give McLaren every possible advantage in their quest for championship glory. What Brown shared pulls back the curtain on a side of Formula One that most fans never get to see, revealing a world where team executives engage in mental games that would make professional poker players jealous. The McLaren boss didn't mince words when he described his approach to competition, explaining how he actively works to undermine other teams through strategic psychological pressure. This revelation gives us an unprecedented look into the cutthroat political landscape that exists behind the glamorous facade of modern Formula One. The confession comes at a particularly interesting time in F1 history, as McLaren has been steadily climbing back toward the top of the championship standings after years of struggling in the midfield. Brown's admission suggests that their resurgence isn't just about building faster cars or hiring better drivers, but about engaging in sophisticated mind games that extend far beyond the racing circuit itself. During his interview, Brown described Formula One as an incredibly political environment where teams compete on multiple levels simultaneously. He explained that the battle for supremacy involves not just drivers and cars, but also sponsors, employees, and strategic positioning within the sport's complex ecosystem. According to Brown, McLaren deliberately tries to create instability within rival organizations as part of their comprehensive competitive strategy. The McLaren chief used a fascinating analogy provided by their team principal Andrea Stella, who apparently refers to these tactics as poison biscuits. This colorful metaphor perfectly captures the essence of what Brown is describing, where teams offer seemingly harmless interactions that are actually designed to create doubt, confusion, or internal conflict within their competitors' organizations. Brown's target for much of this psychological warfare has been Red Bull, the team that dominated Formula One for several seasons with Max Verstappen behind the wheel. The McLaren CEO has been particularly vocal in criticizing various aspects of Red Bull's operations, from their handling of driver relationships to their corporate structure that includes multiple teams under the same ownership umbrella. These public attacks weren't random outbursts or emotional reactions, but calculated moves designed to create pressure and potential instability within the Red Bull camp. The rivalry between Brown and former Red Bull team principal Christian Horner became one of the most entertaining subplots in recent Formula One seasons. Their public exchanges often resembled corporate chess matches, with each executive trying to gain psychological advantages through carefully crafted statements and strategic media appearances. Brown's admission now reveals that these weren't spontaneous conflicts, but part of a deliberate campaign to undermine Red Bull's dominance. What makes Brown's approach particularly interesting is how it mirrors the psychological tactics used by drivers themselves. Just as competitors on track engage in mental warfare through aggressive overtaking moves or strategic positioning, Brown has elevated this concept to the executive level. He draws clear parallels between driver trash talk and the broader organizational mind games that teams play behind the scenes. The concept of destabilization in Formula One extends beyond simple public relations battles. Brown suggests that teams actively work to poach key personnel, create uncertainty around driver contracts, and generally foster an environment where their competitors cannot operate with complete confidence. This creates a constant state of tension within the paddock that goes far beyond the 90 minutes of actual racing that fans see on weekends. Brown's candid admission about these tactics raises fascinating questions about the ethics and effectiveness of such approaches. On one hand, Formula One has always been a sport where every advantage matters, and psychological warfare could be seen as simply another tool in the competitive arsenal. Teams invest hundreds of millions of dollars in their pursuit of success, so it makes sense that they would explore every possible avenue to gain an edge over their rivals. However, there's also an argument that such deliberate destabilization efforts could be counterproductive or even harmful to the sport overall. If teams become too focused on undermining each other through psychological games, they might lose sight of the core mission of building faster cars and developing better racing strategies. The energy spent on corporate warfare could potentially be better invested in engineering and performance improvements. The timing of Brown's admission is particularly significant given McLaren's recent success trajectory. The team has transformed from midfield strugglers to genuine championship contenders over the past few seasons, culminating in what appears to be a world championship victory. Brown's willingness to discuss these behind-the-scenes tactics suggests a level of confidence that comes from achieving their primary objectives through a combination of improved performance and strategic maneuvering. The reaction from other teams to Brown's admission has been mixed, with some embracing the transparency while others suggesting that such public discussions of psychological warfare tactics might not be in the sport's best interests. The Formula One paddock has always thrived on personality conflicts and strategic rivalries, but having a team principal openly discuss deliberate destabilization efforts adds a new dimension to these traditional dynamics. Brown's comments also shed light on the incredible complexity of modern Formula One team management. Today's team principals must be part engineer, part business executive, part media strategist, and apparently part psychological warfare specialist. The job requires not just understanding technical aspects of car development and race strategy, but also navigating the intricate political landscape that surrounds the sport. The McLaren CEO's admission provides valuable insight into why certain public feuds and controversies seem to emerge with such regularity in Formula One. What might appear to casual observers as spontaneous conflicts or personality clashes often turn out to be carefully orchestrated campaigns designed to achieve specific competitive advantages. Looking forward, Brown's openness about these tactics might actually reduce their effectiveness. Once rival teams understand that McLaren is deliberately trying to destabilize them, they can prepare appropriate countermeasures, or simply ignore the psychological pressure entirely. This creates an interesting strategic paradox where transparency about mind games might actually neutralize their impact. The revelation also highlights the incredible intensity and sophistication of modern Formula One competition. Every aspect of team operations, from technical development to media strategy to personnel management, becomes part of the broader competitive battle. Teams must excel not just in engineering and racing, but in every facet of organizational warfare. As Formula One continues to evolve and grow in popularity, Brown's admission provides fans with a rare glimpse into the complex web of relationships and rivalries that drive the sport forward. Understanding these behind-the-scenes dynamics adds another layer of appreciation for what teams and drivers accomplish on track, knowing that they're operating within an environment of constant psychological pressure and strategic maneuvering. Have you ever wondered what it's like when the rumor mill in Formula One starts spinning out of control? Well, buckle up because Mercedes just found themselves at the center of a paddock storm that nobody saw coming, and their response might just surprise you. Picture this scenario. You're heading into the biggest regulation shakeup Formula One has seen in over a decade. Everyone's whispering about who's going to dominate when the 2026 season kicks off. And suddenly, all fingers are pointing at you as the team to beat. Sounds like a dream situation, right? Well, not if you're Mercedes boss Toto Wolff, and definitely not if you understand how Formula One politics really work. The paddock buzz around Mercedes being the 2026 favorites has reached fever pitch, and it all stems from one simple fact. Back in 2014, When Formula One last changed its engine regulations, Mercedes absolutely crushed the competition. They didn't just win races, they dominated an entire era. Now, with another major engine overhaul coming in 2026, everyone's betting they'll pull the same trick twice. But here's where it gets really interesting. Instead of embracing the hype, Mercedes is doing something completely unexpected. They're running away from it as fast as they can, and their reasons reveal something fascinating about how this sport really works behind the scenes. Let me paint you the technical picture first, because understanding what's changing in 2026 is crucial to grasping why everyone thinks Mercedes has the upper hand. The new regulations are introducing a completely different beast of an engine. We're talking about a 50-50 split between traditional combustion power and electrical power. That's right. Half the car's performance will come from batteries and electric motors. Think about that for a moment. In current Formula One cars, the electrical component is significant but secondary. In 2026, it becomes equal partner. This isn't just an evolution, it's a revolution in how these machines generate speed. And Mercedes? Well, they've been the kings of hybrid technology since day one. The engineering challenge is mind-bending. These teams have been working on completely new power units after a 4-year development freeze. Imagine being locked out of your workshop for 4 years, then suddenly being told to build something that's never existed before. That's essentially what every manufacturer has been dealing with. But Mercedes high-performance powertrains, the Brixworth-based engineering arm that builds these incredible machines, has a reputation. When the hybrid era began in 2014, they didn't just adapt to the new rules, they rewrote the playbook. Other manufacturers spent years trying to catch up. Now here's where Toto Wolff's reaction becomes absolutely fascinating. When asked about being labeled as favorites for 2026, his response was pure Wolff honesty. He called his team glass half-empty people who never feel confident about anything. But then he dropped a truth bomb that reveals the real complexity of Formula One success. Even if Mercedes builds the best engine in 2026, they'll have to beat 3 other teams using that same engine. McLaren, the reigning Constructors' champions, will be powered by Mercedes. So will Williams and Alpine. Imagine building the perfect weapon, and then having to compete against 3 other armies using that exact same weapon. That's the reality Mercedes faces. This is where Formula One gets beautifully complicated. It's not just about having the best engine anymore. It's about chassis development, aerodynamics, strategy, driver skill, and 1,000 other variables that can make or break a season. McLaren proved this perfectly by winning the Constructors' Championship in 2024 while using a Mercedes power unit, but doing it better than Mercedes themselves. The paddock rumors have been swirling for months. Whispered conversations in hospitality suites, knowing glances between engineers, the kind of speculation that builds into accepted wisdom without anyone really knowing where it started. But when Hywell Thomas, the man actually responsible for building Mercedes engines, was asked about these rumors, his response was priceless. He essentially said he has no idea how much power his own engine will produce at the first race. So how could anyone else possibly know? This brings us to something crucial about Formula One development. These engineers are working in complete secrecy, pushing boundaries that have never been pushed before. Thomas revealed that during the 2014 regulation change, he was convinced Mercedes was in serious trouble, right up until their engine proved to be dominant. The same man who oversaw one of the most successful engine programs in Formula One history was certain they were behind the competition. This mindset reveals something profound about championship-winning mentalities. The best teams never believe they're good enough. They're constantly pushing, constantly worried, constantly assuming their competitors have found something they've missed. It's this paranoia that drives innovation and prevents complacency. The technical challenges for 2026 are staggering. We're talking about completely reimagining how a Formula One car uses energy. Drivers will need to manage electrical power in ways they've never experienced before. The strategic element becomes massive because you can't just deploy maximum power whenever you want. You need to save energy for the right moments, whether that's defending position, making an overtake, or setting up for a crucial part of the lap. Thomas painted a picture of drivers having the ability to go incredibly fast on one straight. but then being completely drained of electrical energy for the rest of the lap. It's like giving a sprinter rocket boots, but only enough battery for 50 meters. The skill becomes knowing exactly when to use that advantage. What makes this even more intriguing is how different this regulation change is from 2014. Back then, Mercedes was literally inventing technology that didn't exist. Electric turbos spinning at over 100,000 RPM were science fiction until they made them reality. The 2026 regulations, by contrast, are built around technology that already exists, just not in the specific configurations Formula One requires. This could level the playing field in ways nobody expects. When you're inventing completely new technology, the team with the best innovation and the biggest risk tolerance usually wins. But when you're optimizing existing technology, success often comes down to execution, reliability, and the 1,000 tiny details that separate good from great. The power unit cost cap adds another layer of complexity that didn't exist in 2014. Mercedes can't just throw unlimited resources at the problem anymore. They have to be smart about where they invest, which components get the most development time, and how to extract maximum performance from a fixed budget. It's like being asked to build a spaceship, but only being allowed to shop at specific stores with a predetermined amount of money. Mercedes will supply 4 teams in 2026, which creates both opportunity and challenge. More data, more feedback, more chances to understand how the power unit performs across different chassis and driving styles, but also more competition from teams who might execute better with the same engine. The 3 pre-season tests will be absolutely crucial. 1 in Barcelona, 2 in Bahrain. These sessions will be the first time these revolutionary power units face real-world conditions. All the dyno testing and computer simulations in the world can't replicate the chaos of an actual Formula One weekend. Thomas emphasized that getting through these tests will determine everything. The interaction between power unit, chassis, tires, and driver is so complex that predicting performance beforehand is almost impossible. Teams could discover game-changing advantages or catastrophic problems within hours of hitting the track. The psychological warfare aspect of Formula One is already beginning. Teams positioning each other as favorites, spreading rumors, managing expectations. Mercedes clearly understands that being labeled as the team to beat puts a target on their back. Other manufacturers will benchmark against them, look for weaknesses, develop strategies specifically to counter perceived Mercedes advantages. But perhaps the most revealing insight came from Thomas when he acknowledged that regulation changes always create opportunities for someone to steal a march on the competition. Despite the FIA's efforts to prevent any single manufacturer from dominating, the complexity of these new systems means breakthrough discoveries are possible. Someone, somewhere, might have found the loophole that changes everything. The efficiency battle will be particularly fascinating. It's not just about raw power anymore, it's about how efficiently that power gets converted into lap time. The most efficient electrical system wins by staying active longer, giving drivers more usable energy throughout each stint. These marginal gains compound over race distance into significant advantages. Driver adaptation will be crucial in ways we haven't seen before. The interaction between human and machine becomes more complex when energy management is so critical. Some drivers will adapt quickly to these new demands. Others might struggle with the additional mental workload. Team strategies will need to evolve to help drivers optimize energy deployment. As we head toward the 2026 season, Mercedes finds itself in a unique position. Historically successful, technically respected, but genuinely uncertain about what they've created. Their glass half-empty mentality might be exactly what keeps them sharp when the lights go out in March. The beauty of Formula One is that all this speculation, all these predictions, all these carefully managed expectations will be settled by pure performance when it matters most. Mercedes might dominate again, or they might discover that someone else found the magic formula. Either way, 2026 is shaping up to be one of the most unpredictable seasons in Formula One history. And Mercedes' reaction to the favorites tag tells us they understand exactly how dangerous those expectations can be.